love those island boys. Little girl, use your head. They will tear you up like a paper toy. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, no, no, no. When they smile at you, darling, and wink, it's a lethal force that'll bring you down. Trying to get you tipsy like a drink. Love drunk girls.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Rumbi.
Welcome to It's Layered.
We're in a long-distance friendship that started over 20 years ago when we were in high school.
We'll be talking all things life, love, family, anything and everything else under the sun.
Delve deeper with us, because in life, you know, Gina my layers. My layers sometimes, like today.
The most.
Hey!
The most. Actually, how do we get to these layered topics, Rumbi? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves?
I think just because we rap and we talk and they're like, bruh, is it only us? I think a lot of the things, to be honest, it's more us kind of like, we can't be the only ones who feel this way, right? Like, I'm not crazy, right? You know those moments where you're like,
yeah,
just us? Or
yeah.
You know? So I think that's where a lot of our more layered topics come from. It's conversations and then wanting to like share and also help our listeners hopefully feel like they're not alone, like we're all navigating these waters and terrains of life, and if we can say one thing that helps you, or just for you to feel like, oh, at least it's not only me, that's really what we're here for.
Yes, that part. Because sometimes you start to think, ish, bro, I'm the only one, everyone else has normal relationships.
Yes.
Mine's just complications everywhere.
Funny enough, I finally built up the courage to watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians, the final season. Anyone who knows me, that is my guilty pleasure show. I have been judged countless times.
Yes.
Funny, one of my colleagues this week was like, when they found out I watch reality TV, like Keeping Up, they're like, Rumbi, I thought when you go home, you go and write theses. I was like, geez, guys, like, what do I look like?
Professor Dube.
I literally was like, dang, son. But then he came back, he was like, no, it's because you're a mix of eloquent and elegance. So, you know, I was like, okay, I'll take that, but I can also be rap.
That was the same.
Yeah, I was like, you don't know. I may be calm on these streets, but I'm also rash on the other streets. Just hold yourself. Mm-hmm.
As much as I judge you for keeping up, I think it's just the fact that I do understand guilty pleasures. I'm the same with Real Housewives of Atlanta. I know it's absolute trash, but like it was one of the first and only representations I used to have of Black people on TV.
Yes,
I'm Australian TV. They caught on quite quickly getting the seasons like whatever, 10, 15 years ago, whenever it started. So I still watch out of loyalty, but I know like my brain cells are slowly dying. Yeah. But it's like, it's a welcome death.
It's a welcome death. But yeah, so exactly. And also some of us, my brain is always on. I'm always overthinking. Yeah. So it's one of the times I can like switch off completely. But I was watching it and I was looking at them and like how far they've come. They're living in these beautiful homes. The makeup always did, hair right, what. But like it's Kim going through a difficult time with Kanye and the experience. And I think sometimes when we look at people like the Kardashians, like obviously there's a lot they've done that is like questionable, but it's also like to realize everyone goes through things. And I think sometimes media sells us this false hope, like if you are successful, if you are pretty, if you have X, if you have Y, you don't have moments of like WTF or complicated relationships that throw you off, you know? So I think a lot of what we do is try and normalize, like, you can be thriving in areas of your life, but also have moments where you're like, what is happening? It doesn't have to be like, you know, separate. Like the two are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist at the same time.
Definitely. And that's a great example you brought up, because they do probably define complicated relationships. Because like, you know, it's Kardashian, Jenner, So it's like, okay, there's a stepdad, then the stepdad who transitioned into a woman.
Yes.
That's complicated in itself. There's, each of them have had drama. Chloe with Tristan, Kylie was now with Tiger was then now with Black China was now with... So to be honest, when you look at them, as successful as they are, they're not cookie cutter, which is what complicated relationships are all about. It's not the way how this relationship is meant to work, but you get given a different deck of cards. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with it now?
1,000%. Do you have any experience, or do you have a lot of experience with complicated relationships? Maybe I'm at like defining complicated. She just defined it. Basically, it's anything that looks different to what the norm is sold as. And the norm, quote unquote, which is a falsehood, by the way, is the picket fence life where, oh my gosh, they're so thoughtful, kind, respectful, love you as you are, encouraging, inspiring, giving, all that. Anything that deviates from your expectation of what it should be, oftentimes being in a more difficult, sticky, gray area way. So do you have experience with complicated relationships? It could be at work, in family, it could be with friends, it could just any kind of situation where you are existing apart from yourself, you're in relationship with somebody else. And that's
definitely. And I think also to add on to your definition, it's almost like a bell curve, sorry to be all scientific, but most people fall in that majority, and then there's those edges where it's not as many, there's not as many people, you're there, you've got community, but you're not as, so everyone expects people to have a mom and a dad and they die when they're 80, and you get grandkids and normal life, but yours goes left. Maybe you got two dads, or it's just so obviously for me, I'd probably say a lot of my complicated relationships stem from family. Obviously my dad married twice, so there's that, having to get to know a stepmom, is complicated in itself, because it's always territorial, obviously, because you're bruh, my life before you and my life after you,
Yes.
And then obviously the family dynamic within that. And then also with work, I've been pretty lucky. Yes. I've observed a lot of shitty situations, but I haven't, of course, in some way, everyone's going to have a bad boss or something at some point, but not really one-on-one. Yes. I would probably have to say a lot of mine come from family. How do you feel?
I agree. I think I have both. A lot of my sleepless nights have been to do with work relationships. I've had a lot of complicated relationships, whether it's with bosses or work environment, toxicity. I think I went into the working world with a lot of naivety, especially that idea you finish college, you get a job and you work your way and whatever. There's no school for the company politics and kind of throwing under the bus or those.
The red tape.
The, sort of people being unethical, or I've had a lot of experience where people came after me personally, try and break you down personally, or to inhibit you or take advantage of you. A lot of it too, obviously being Black, coming from the country I do, Zimbabwe, all of that mess. And Amanda can attest, she's witnessed a lot of that. And it's you still have to go to work and smile and perform because you still need that check. But it's inside you're breathing and dying inside. So I think definitely.
And I think that's the thing with complicated relationships as well. You can't necessarily leave them, so you need to find a way to deal. So it's I mean, of course anyone listening would probably be just get yourself out of that situation, but I think this is more streamlined to what if you can't right, as I said, my stepmom, I can't exactly what do I do, divorce her? There's no way. And for you with work, if it's a job you enjoyed, it's why should you now, and especially when you're immigrant, and like you're like, well, I found this job, I'm happy. I can't be like always looking on to the next, you know. So I want to build your career or whatever it is. So it's like, how do you then deal with that? What do you think has been your most complicated relationship you've ever had? Like, you look at that person and you think, I've learned a lot, or you've put me through a lot.
Through the wire. I can think of two. One was when I managed an artist, and just like no respect for me or my time, phone calls at 4 a.m., just you do work and it's like you schedule interviews or appointments. I don't want to go. No, they must come to me. Just all that, and trying to be productive in that environment, and then like that inappropriateness and sort of not being professional, and still trying to operate. And even after leaving that job, or that, still being like, oh, why didn't, you know, still having phone calls. I have to block. It's a lot. Like, that was a very complicated relationship. I was young too at that point. So learning how to trust my voice in that, in the midst of the chaos, it taught me a lot. And I think I'm better employee, better working professional from a lot of my experience. And then
it tested your boundaries, it sounds like.
Tested my boundaries, 1,000%. And also, not too long ago, when I first came here, my first work experience was like terrible, you know, up to the point where I actually was scared for myself, like when I was trying to quit, because it was like manipulation. You cannot quit. I need your visas going, even though I had gone through the transfer of my immigration status to my new employer, and done properly by an agency and all that, a reputable, all that done. Trying to manipulate it so my name would be at stake and my status would be at stake in the country.
Like just delaying things.
Wanting me to hand in like my visa card, which he had no business getting. And, you know, all things like that. And like shouting at me and me feeling physically afraid. Like, that was also like really jarring. So I think we go through a lot, bruh. It's a lot. Those are the two, I think, situations that really stuck out for me. And for you, Amanda, like, what has been the most complicated, do you feel?
I definitely feel, for me, it's been with my stepmom, because I think it's like, it's such a territorial position to have in the African family, and any family, especially African, because the woman is meant to hold the household together. She's meant to be the console. She's meant to be the girl. She's meant to be everything.
Yes.
So like, obviously there's expectations then on both sides. And then also historically within our culture, blended families or step parents or half, whatever you want to call them, have notoriously been not good. We've never really seen good examples in our community. We've always associated with complicatedness, with, you know, with toxic situations. So I think because there's a lot of anger, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, why did you remarry? Or why did you remarry that family? Or so it always comes, I find it very hard right now to think of a Zimbabwean family I know, celebrity or otherwise, that have a good example for me to be like, oh, but they made it work. Like, you know, Will and Jada vibes, okay, but even though they keep reporting on each other's ones, blended family vibes, you know, where it's like, okay, you know, he has a son with someone else, but then you know, learn to live with it. We don't really have a Zimbabwean pillar for that.
Yes.
And like small houses just made it worse as well, but just perpetuates that toxicity. So I think for me, obviously, it's been very, because I'm sure now that I've grown through it, I see that she obviously wanted to assert herself as she ought to in our culture, because then she needs to like rein it in, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, there was little to no respect for me still grieving, me still wanting it differently, me still wishing it was different. Like I'm 14, 15, 16, I still want my mom, you know?
Yes.
So you almost need to come through as a friend as opposed to authority. So it's almost like, our love languages or our just didn't gel,
at
you
all,
know, and and like it just felt everything was like a fight. So the best way to like spend time was to not spend time at all. Like I'll come back home from our fixture-free weekends, as you would know, and I'll just be in my room or go out and meet you guys for a movie or whatever. Like it was never really, and then that just makes it worse because you don't get to know each other.
And so also our society is not really communicative, like period.
No,
it's not a communicative, open, honest.
Yeah, and then when family comes to visit, you're all acting sweet and nice, but it's like, not what it's like when there's no one, And then if I reached out to my dad, it's like complicated for him because he just wants it to work. So he doesn't want to hear that it's not working, And it's easier, I felt at that time, easier to shout at me, like, don't be difficult, than to say that to your new wife, right?
Yes.
So I find for me, it has been the relationship that has tested me, surprised me, pushed me, left me raw because it's so layered. It's like, even like now you're going through Lobola and Rora preparations, and I still think back on mine. Yes. And even that would have been different because the setup is different.
Yes.
But it's just, I actually feel with age, we've both calmed down. And in a way, we've both grown and realized that it is what it is, and are learning and I think me being away as well, it's the ultimate comfort, right? Because it's not awkward. I'm not living there under the same roof.
Yes.
So it's a bit easier. And then when I come to Zim for like 2 weeks, I got no time. I'm just here to have a good time, meet my friends, my family. So it's still complicated. It definitely is still teaching me a lot of things.
I can imagine. I think it's an unusual, like you said, it's not because you're living on the periphery of what the top of that bell curve of a family looks like. It's like you're trying to process, wait, how does this work? And then you have personalities and you're not speaking or communicating so it just amplifies and builds. And it's I can only imagine how hard it is to navigate something like that. But how would you, like, what do you think even about blended families and how that, because I know Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats have tried to sell us the dream of, like, we just
their dreams
we make it work and it all works out. What do you think, and how do you even
I've had blended families from both sides. So obviously there's my stepmom as well, and then I have a half brother as well. So then I got to like experience sort of almost both ways, like,
almost.
And like, I think for me personally, it's how you address those initial feelings, because then that like is the foundation.
Yes.
So I feel like in a Zimbabwean construct, and we talked about this on our mental health episode, getting help, getting therapy, because I think those things are where you can like say what you need to say, because you can't. There's some things that can't be left unsaid. And I know our culture loves to leave things unsaid, but for this to work, it requires pure honesty, because then you can like give someone your boundaries. You can say, oh, look, I'm not ready to share my birthday with two sides of the family, or I'm not, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's eased into, it's intentional. It's not just all or nothing, accept it, like, and that's how like Zimbabweans, that's how we operate. Like, you go home, say as a new wife, and it's like, oh, okay.
Who is now? And
then, exactly. And then people make it seem like you're being stupid for being lost. But it's like, no, but how am I? I've never been probably introduced to this woman. I've never been, so I feel like it's a lot of it happens behind closed doors. And then because I was in boarding school, it felt like every time I was going home, there was a new change and a new change and and it's like, but when are we getting to talk about this? When are we? And then even with the
level of like this instability as a result.
Exactly. And I think so the only way blended families can truly work is if there's time for that growth, that foundation, that therapy to happen. And even having said that, some people probably never accept it because
1,000%.
it's like, no, I'm not ready for this.
And we spoke about it too in the mental health episode, in the sense that you almost have to also look at seeking out therapy or help, not only just from like, let's come together and talk. If that person says, Jack, I ain't finna talk about this, or Jack, I ain't finna address this. How do I exist in the space knowing I cannot cut off these people? Like, you sometimes understand why people are like, you need to cut off certain family. I cut off my parents. And you're like, how did you cut off your parents? You know what I mean? But when you don't have that, or you're just someone who doesn't want to, how do you, it's also about finding ways that you can be in those environments and spaces. Maybe it's limiting your time, in those spaces. And how do you cope and see yourself in that and behave and manage your feelings and not let things get to you, but also not just be a punching bag or like someone who just receives it all. So it's so layered and complicated. And I think it ties to even with toxic work environments or bosses or spaces. I think what you have to learn to do is almost separate your personal from the professional. And if you feel someone attacking your personal without warrant, or there's no need, is setting boundaries and saying like, I don't believe this has to do with my work performance. Or if you have something to share with regards to what I'm doing, please share that. Learning to speak up for yourself in that way. But when it's sometimes toxic people and you see they don't have a comprehension of their own behavior or their own, like they're not emotionally
they're not
aware.
Self-aware.
They're not self-aware. You almost have to watch them. Like, I've had situations where I watch and observe the person and I'm like, wow, this person really doesn't know how to handle their X, Y. Remove yourself. If I say anything, it's not going to be heard. Or I can only express myself in this kind of environment. And then the rest of the time, you know, I don't need to engage in that. So it's complicated, but also learning how much time you spend there. Like, you know, I've become the queen of checking in and checking out of work. Like, when I'm at work, sure, I'm at work. When I leave work, check out, like, you know, trying to separate the two.
Compartmentalize,
Compartmentalize. Obviously, when you're in a very stressful situation, for me, it bleeds into my sleep patterns. So my sleep is very negatively affected. And it's something I'm still learning to ride that wave, and how do I handle that and deal with it. But for the most part, like, if I learn to just be like, I'm at home now, or I'm at work, like doing that, like live my life separately like that. But it's hard. It's hard.
Like, it's so, and every day is different, right? Because some days you feel a bit different, some days and you need to figure out what your triggers are too. Like, because this person will push them buttons, whatever your buttons would already be. So you said it so well. Like, is it a time thing? Like, for me, I hardly am ever home for long spells. Because I know towards the end, everything this person will say would just annoy me. Like, it's the given, and I'm working on it. But whilst I'm working on it, I'm not going to like put myself to that extreme, you know? So I nicely do like a week or two, maybe even travel within Zim, breathe, come back, you know, just so that it's not like consistently. So you need to look for ways that if it's at work, it's like, do you have to be always in this person's periphery space? And sometimes some people keep plonking themselves back into your life. So you need to find a way to deal with that, to keep it short and sweet and keep it moving. I mean, we talked about these relationships and it sounds like we're trying to find ways to avoid the situation. But what happens when it's something you can't avoid? Or it's like a love-hate, like with friendships, for example. A lot of people have toxic friendships or toxic relationships, love relationships. What are your thoughts on when it starts to become too complicated?
My thing is, and I also have applied it even in my work environment, is doing like a pros and cons list almost of how much am I gaining from this situation and how much is it costing me, you know, in terms of my mental health or like my stress levels or whatever. And if you find, for me at work, it was, if I'm not learning anything new, I'm not growing, I'm not progressing, then it's okay for me to leave. But then with certain relationships, you can't cut off. Like, if it's your uncle, it's your uncle, what you want to do? Like, that's family. I think it's never easy, but often in relationships that you choose, you also have the choice to express yourself. You also have the choice to create boundaries. You also have the choice to choose to not be in those spaces. So that's the other thing. When it comes to relationships, you choose. I think with toxicity, it's trying to not to add more toxins to that toxicity. Like, you need to, self-awareness becomes really important. Understanding the situation for what it is, getting help, even if it's an outside perspective on what the environment, and if it is detrimental to your well-being, your safety, oftentimes I think it is important to leave. But when it's complicated, when it's love, hate, like sometimes it's really great, but there's this one little niggling thing. It's like, can I live with this? Or is it a deal breaker? Like, everything's great. Like, which one, what do I value more? This or that? So that's what you also have to ask. And also to know that there is nothing perfect and in this world at all. Maybe it's an expectations thing of yourself. Like, are my expectations too high for this person and this environment? And I think a lot of hurt and disappointment comes from expectations. I expect you to be like this, instead of taking people at face value. This person ain't never gonna change. This is who they are. And then just be like, okay, if this is who they are, I'm not gonna talk to them when they drink, or I'm not gonna, things like that. I don't know if I'm even answering the question at all.
No, you are. I think it's just so tough, because with friendships, you want to see the good side of people.
Yes.
So when they have that little bad thing, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. You try to like just, they get a bit annoying when they're drinking. Oh, it's not that bad, because you're like trying to not confront. And it just depends as well how self-aware the other person is.
Exactly.
And then it becomes a conversation of, is it your place to show them that there's a toxicity happening here, and how would they go about that? I mean, I have had friendships that have broken apart because the person wasn't ready to fully be aware of, to hear that. Yeah. And sometimes you just know this person's not gonna, they still have they have a lot of stuff going on before they can even accept what you're saying. So it's sad, because it's like you lose someone great just because of some complex issues. But at the same time, it's like, well, you need to protect your sanity. Exactly. So I think you just need to decide. Like, it's so funny you talk about the Kardashians, because I always think that with Courtney, she sometimes comes across very problematic for me. I've only seen a little clips. I'm not an avid watcher like Rumbi, so I probably have a very edited, in fact, I know I have a very heavily edited thing. But I think like sometimes she can just be like mean to be mean, or say something to say something.
Courtney, and like sometimes
Courtney for me. Okay. Chloe, I think, is just reactive. So if you do it to her, she'll do it to you.
Yes, that's true.
But like Courtney, I think she doesn't like something. She's just like, nah. She won't try because
1000% with her blank clear face. Yes.
Yeah. So I think like people like that, sometimes it's like, sometimes you need to dig deeper to find out why they are so. Because they might have their reasons, But having said that, they also need to then be open enough to tell you their side of things.
Exactly.
So I think sometimes with friendships, you have to almost lean on your friendship to be like, is this friendship good enough to actually have this chat, to actually go there?
You need to understand your space, how you operate, the dynamic, how you guys communicate. Sure. And I think, one of the hard things is learning to convey your sentiment or how you feel about a situation, even if they are not fully prepared to receive it all. Like, that's a very hard thing to do. And you have to know, like, if I say this, things might go really badly. So am I willing to say it and risk things going completely left? Or am I willing to just live with it for as long as I can? You know what I mean? So that's something else to factor in.
To consider. Do you reckon you've ever done that with family though?
Like sharing,
bond there, with someone.
1000%. I've always been the most vocal about a lot of how I feel and sentiments. Most of the time it's backfired and hit me back in the face. Our African families, you don't do stuff like that. You don't share. So I've absolutely done it. But I think
do you reckon it was worth it?
For my integrity,
sometimes you do something and then you're like,
for my integrity, for who I am as a person, and just because I look at situations, I'm like, am I the only one? Am I the only one seeing this, and everyone else is just going to pretend like I've always been that person? I've learned a lot to be less hot-headed, less slamming of doors on my parents. Yes, I slammed doors on my parents before, but
You're brave.
Yeah, I'm brave. It's backfired to the heck, but I know I'm someone who feels like if I need to express something, I need to express it. Maybe the regret would be how I expressed it or how I conveyed the message. But unfortunately, too, this is something else we need to realize. When you're in relationships, sometimes our emotions are too tied in. So it's not always easy to be as objective. It's way easier said than done. It's not always easy to convey a message in a way someone else wants to receive it, especially in the heat of a moment. So yeah, absolutely. Done it, backfired. Would I do it again? Probably, maybe a little different if I had the maturity.
Remix. I'll do the remix.
The remix for it. And to be fair, like some of the things I've said in retrospect after some time, people have come back and said, oh, like what you said, I've been thinking about what you said, XYZ. Doesn't mean they've changed. Not necessarily. But it's at least I can go to bed knowing like I wasn't pretending like everything was dandy. So yeah. I don't know if you have definitely had the guts like me.
No. That's not. This is the Leo in you for sure. Because the Libra in me seeks balance at all times. At all times.
Peace.
So
don't disturb the peace.
Peace first. You get it. I don't want to be coming in and shaking things up.
Yeah.
I haven't. I really sometimes feel cowardly for it because I'm very vocal, very like a lot of people who know me would think I would just say whatever's on my mind. But somehow when it comes to family, especially, I choose my peace. When it comes to complicated friendships, I choose my peace. Sometimes I'm just like, bruh, does it really like keep it moving? Like I'm just, because I think I guess it's a very avoidant because I never really then get to tell them. Then I guess maybe when I do, it's like a lot of stuff from ages ago.
Yeah.
But I think I just also know it's not going to land right because as you said, emotions are tied. I know I'm a crier when I'm heavily like involved, which then makes it all sorts of messy. Yeah. And then I also know like my brain, my mouth runs slower than my brain. So then I'll be like I just feel like it would just be a lot. And my family tends to be typical African, very, very avoidant, very, very sweep things under the rug, keep it moving. So I'm an outlier as it is. And then this would just be like out of the stratosphere. So like, I think it just, and then I moved to Australia as well. So I think it just then perpetuated that whole, we just don't go
out of sight, out of mind.
Like I think if I went home maybe as often as you used to, like even when you lived in South Africa, it might have been. But if I'm only seeing you every 2 years, then it starts to think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Am I really gonna like my dad told me about my half brother in an email. Like this is how avoidant I'm talking. Like my brother and I, my older brother and I were like, in an email? Okay. But like in some ways it was like to avoid the shock we would have had, to avoid the consequent questions we would have had, to, and also maybe to lay out your thoughts, because obviously like when you're writing, it's like you can then really say all the things you want to say. But in a way that's quite sad that we never actually, then by the time we went home, whenever I went home next, it was like, oh, well, it's normal. Like it was, I've already told you. So now the anger felt misplaced to come a year later. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
it's just, and even between me and my half brother, it's like, we've never even talked about it, like properly. We've never given in, like, how does he feel coming in knowing that he missed this whole chunk of our lives where he could have been involved, but he was hidden away. And obviously for him, he's come in with that mentality of, I want to fit in, right? Because he's the outside one. So he's like really keen to make connections.
Yes.
And then we're on the opposite side of the scale. We're like, okay, dude, who are you?
Yes.
You know? So like, and maybe also and anyone here who has later found out that they have siblings, small houses and such, please let me know if this is right or this has been your experience. But definitely it's kind of weird because the small house child or the one coming to you has known about you the whole time.
Yes.
And then you have just found out. So it's like you're totally, why do our parents do this to us? But anyway, it's like you're totally on opposite sides of the spectrum. So then you're trying to like find common ground. Like they're so familiar with you and you're so unfamiliar. So it's like, oh my gosh, how do we build this friendship quick, fast? Like, how do we do this? You know?
Yes.
So it's, oh girl, because it's like, yeah, your parents just go, okay, you've met, like now you should just be friends. You know, it is so strange. And then
play nice.
Yeah, and there's black tax thrown into it as well. Like now you're gonna have to take care of each other, and it's like, I don't know this dude. I didn't grow up with him, you know. So it's like, at the same time, you also like, I'm very loving, and I know I'm very generous. So like, I'm also at the same time like, it's not his fault.
Yes.
So I'm conscious to also not be mean to him. What's the point in that? Like literally, what is the point in that? But at the same time, it's like your go-to, right? You just be angry. And the only person you can be angry at would be, because you can't be angry at your parent, because your parent is like,
they ain't listening. They
don't care. They literally don't care. To them, they've now told you, accept that this is life, you know. So I'd be really keen to hear, like, if any of our listeners have experienced this or
please share. Yes.
What type of relationships you do have with your half siblings, if you have a relationship. Some people are pretty quick to just cut that and not ever let it in. And then some people, as I said, will blend it in completely and act like they've been siblings forever. So it's strange. It's super strange.
It's very strange and very layered. Do you have any advice on how to navigate these really complicated relationships? Like, is there anything we can help the people?
I feel like I need the advice.
Drop it in the comments, yeah. Let us know.
Help me. Definitely, I think just to talk about it, like just to be, and also not to sweat the small stuff.
Okay, that's cool.
I think, as I said before, with Rora and now, because you find when you're presenting yourselves as a family, those family things come up, right? Obviously, Rora was a big learning curve for me as well, because I learned not to sweat the small stuff. And in doing that, allowed me and my stepmom to have quite common ground and put together like a good celebration. And, you know, I was really, really surprised. A lot of things she did for me and was there for me. But I think I also allowed her to be. So I think it's like having a lot of grace. And being the bigger person, which is really hard, so much easier said than done.
Especially when you're the younger. You're like, I'm the child though. I'm like, you know what I mean, in the context.
And then hopefully if you, I mean, as we talked about mental health, if you've gone for therapy, hopefully you've also learned a couple of tools to use. And our parents never will. I'm not even going to say they never will. And they're at that age where they're also stubborn. So it's almost like, you need to do the work sometimes for both of you. And just learn how to navigate the ickiness.
Yes, for sure. I agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head about like, sometimes it's about you doing the work for you both. I think for me, how with complicated relationships, I think I've realized I had expectations of what family is meant to be like, what family, and sometimes you grapple with, everyone thinks we're this, but we're not. You get what I mean? Or like, I thought family's supposed to be like this, but it's not. Or my work environment's supposed to be like this, but it's not. I thought, biggest fallacy, I thought life was a meritocracy. Like if I did my job, I'm going to be successful. but it's completely false. So what I've really had to learn is managing and handling myself, my expectations, my thoughts, accepting my siblings are really great in accepting like, it is what it is, or this is how it is. Whereas I'm like, but why is it supposed to be? It's not supposed to be like this, you know? And I think there's merit to both perspectives, but also knowing when do you need to channel your energy and when do you just have to be like, you know what, it is what it is for real. That is my personal advice with regards to this, is just knowing what's worth the fight and what's not, pouring into yourself so you have the tools and the strength and the mental gymnastics to handle these icky situations, and also then pulling out when you need to, like taking time. Don't just immerse yourself in that all the time, take time away and take a breather. But we could go on.
We could go on, girl. Do you think you've ever been the toxic person
in
any relationship you've had? Do you ever think like, maybe that was me? I was the villain.
No, for sure. I can sit here and be like, no, I always knew. No. I think in certain maybe romantic contexts, I had expectations of someone without truly knowing them or where they were at. And so I felt a right and entitlement to be like, you should, but really, like, it's fine. And then acting out on that triggers again. We've spoken about triggers and how it triggered something and then you lash out. So then it's like, 1000%. Like, maybe was it warranted that I was toxic about that in that situation? Maybe somewhat, but I didn't need to. Then you, instead of handling the situation or resolving, it just escalates, and then it just blows up. So I have been. Would you say you've been in that position?
Yeah, I think sometimes the bad thing about bottling things up or just thinking you've moved on when you really have is then when it comes up, it just blows over, like boils over. And I think for me, it's been then not recognizing that it's a two-way street, right? I feel this way, but this person also feels that other way. So sometimes I'm so keen for you to just know how I'm feeling, that I forget to also just be like, okay, but what about you? Like, it's not only happening. And then also to try to see from their perspective. I think I've learned a lot to do that, to try just be like, okay, but how are they feeling about it? Like, how are they trying to consider the other side? I think sometimes we're so quick to just say how we feel that we forget that it's landing somewhere, right? And that they feel how they feel too. So then who's right, who's wrong? Like, there's no right, there's no wrong.
And sometimes you build up your idea of what they're thinking. This person is sitting down and actually thinking, plotting against me. Man, well, they're probably not even thinking about you like that.
And especially with family, because I think sometimes some people are very, very capable. And I've learned some people are very, very capable of conflict and moving on. Like, you're still stuck on that fight, but they're like long forgotten about it.
Living
and they come around to joke with you. You're like, but I thought last time we had a altercation. Like, what's this? And I don't think it's always as a way to be apologetic. I think this just doesn't even occur to them that was like, they're like, oh yeah, we talked about that. And then like, some people's language is abrasive and angry and they can be fine the next second. And for some of us, it's like, oh my gosh, you're still hurting me. Why did you say that to me? So it's like learning that we're all different. We all do things differently.
We move different.
We really do, hey? Like, I mean, sometimes when I'm annoyed with something, I want to tell you right there and then. Sometimes I have people who are like, I had to mull it over. I'm like, why are you wasting days? But clearly we're different, right? So
well, I hope for anyone listening, you got something in it. Like, as you can see, we too are figuring it, because it's ongoing, bruh. just existing in this world with other people is complicated. You know, that Facebook status of it's complicated. It's not only a romantic relationship, it'd be life. That's what it is. Complicated. So I hope you have garnered something, and I would love to truly, honestly, hear your thoughts about dealing with some of these situations, because we would love to get some input and advice. So for real, hit us up. But before we give you all our details of hitting us up, we have a Zim shout out today, and it goes to Runyararo Mapumo. Okay, Runyararo M. I'll let Amanda break down our shout out for today.
Well, we love film and TV, which we've done an episode on already. One of the shows we do, well, I watch definitely very religiously, is Sex Education. And like, there's nothing like seeing our names like written or directed by, then you see like a Shona name and you're like, my person, like, and this is what happened. This is how I came across this lovely lady, and she's directed quite a lot of the latest episodes on the latest season, a lot of episodes on there. She's obviously a budding film and director, producer. She's doing a lot of work in England, coming out of London. So just, I think it's just nice to see people doing their things in their lanes. Rimbi and I always talk about how it would be nice to have a community where we could just like, similar like Facebook or whatever, we just kind of like put what you're up to, you know, so we can all, but I mean, I guess down the track that can be a thing, but right now it's nice to see us arise as Zimbabweans and find spaces in new places. Yes. Her episodes are quite epic. There's one when, without spoiling, where they pretend, they go to Nigeria within the episode, and then to find out that she was behind it. So obviously, like, it gave her that African flair that it had. But if you watch Sex Education, definitely check out the latest season and the episodes she did. If you don't, check her out anyway on Instagram, Munyararo M. There's a lot of new projects she'll be doing. She's always also shouting out on Twitter, if there's, especially in the UK, opportunities to like if you're like a hairdresser or a makeup artist, just to be behind the scenes in a film industry. And sometimes you don't know where to go to and where to find these opportunities, and she's always sharing, and it's good to have that sense of community as well. Wonderful. Well, shout out to you. Thank you, Am, for the shout out of the week, or the episodes week, like we release week. I know, right? Shout out of the episode. And as always, truly, we love hearing from you. On it, like, no lie. You know, I know people say it like, we'd love to hear from you. Please let us. Like, no, we actually really do enjoy hearing your thoughts and perspectives, and you sharing your stories, because this isn't just for us to just, word vomit and share only what we go through, but it's we'd love to hear from you too. So hit us up on Instagram, it's Layered. On Twitter, it's Layered Pod. Our email, it's layeredpod@gmail.com. Show us love. We really are just even thrilled to be getting to season 3, and people are still listening. It's wild. Crazy. So thank you so much. And thank you, Am, as always, for being a great hostess with the mostest. Okay. We're back at you. And we'll see you in our next episode, everybody. Take care. See you guys. Bye. Bye.